Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. What I want to do now is go through a checklist of what the new head coach, Mark Pope, needs to do in his first few days at Kentucky and his first few days on the job. I think the first thing, I think the most important thing, I'll be blunt. Usually it's hit the portal. Usually it's talk to high school recruits. Usually it's put a staff together. You know what I think the most important thing is for Mark Pope? He needs to get the guys that are currently on campus to buy into who he is and what he's about. Listen, you're not going to keep all of them. Adu Thiero's in the portal. Aaron Bradshaw's in the portal. Rob Dillingham is declared. Justin Edwards has declared. But unless I miss something, Reed Sheppard hasn't declared. DJ Wagner hasn't declared. Big Z hasn't declared. And even the players in the portal can come back. Now, depending on the process with Dillingham and whatever, I don't think Dillingham's coming back. I don't think Justin Edwards is coming back. But I think the first thing and the most important thing for Mark Pope, I'll be honest, you know what I truly believe it is? Talk to those kids on campus, because I think once you get in front of him, they're going to be like, man, this is a guy that I want to play for. Like I said, he's young, he's dynamic, he's fun. It's a great offense. And I think obviously the number one priority is trying to convince Reed Sheppard to come back. Now, listen, I have no insight. I've heard the rumors that if Mark Pope was hired, who obviously his old college teammate is Jeff Sheppard, Reed's father. And obviously that if Mark Pope was hired, Reed would stay for another year. I have no insight into that. I don't know if it's true. And I don't think Mark Pope or Jeff Sheppard wants to hold Reed Sheppard back if he wants to go pro. But I've said from the beginning, I've never believed that Reed Sheppard was a lock, no doubt about it, one and done. One, no disrespect to Reed, I don't believe he's a top 5 pick. I think it's easy to talk about this and that. And by the way, I hate to say it, all these guys who do mock drafts, except for one or two of them, there's a couple good ones out there, but they do it for clicks. How does Donovan Clingan go from outside the top 10 to the number 1 overall pick according to ESPN after one game? Okay, you're doing it for clicks. And so they know Kentucky fans drive clicks on the internet. And so I think Reed Sheppard, he's a lottery pick. I think he's probably more in the 9 to 14 range than he is in the 1 to 5 range. And so you convince him to come back. By the way, we know that there was a $4 million commitment to NIL today. We know that Reed Sheppard is among the highest paid NIL athletes in college basketball. I have made the argument, Reed Sheppard as a Kentucky basketball player. Now, I understand over the totality of a rookie NBA contract, it's not going to compare. But as a Kentucky basketball player, Reed Sheppard is uniquely built to make more money in college than the pros. Why is that? It's because he is going to get opportunities as a Kentucky basketball player that he won't get if he's the 11th pick and playing for the Charlotte Hornets. He's just not going to. And so I think you at least have to have the conversation. Don't come back if you don't want to. If you're ready to go pro, we would never hold you back. But at least consider the possibility of what coming back for another season could do for you. Because I think that's the key piece. If Reed Sheppard comes back, I'll be blunt. I think that bluntly, I think if Reed Sheppard comes back in that offense, I think we were talking about a potential national player of the year this year, okay? I truly believe that there is a possibility that Reed Sheppard could win national player of the year with Mark Pope under that offense a year from now. After Reed Sheppard, I think the big thing would be trying to retain some of the other guys on that roster, because I think there's some guys that have some fringe NBA draft stock right now that bluntly, if you can convince them to come back in that system, you can elevate their draft stock. DJ Wagner, I believe to be a very good player. Now, I don't know what DJ wants. I don't know. Does he want to go pro and risk it? Does he want to follow Cal to Arkansas? I don't know. But if I'm Mark Pope, I'm showing him a couple highlights and saying, bruh,
You were a top 10 pick coming into this season. I can make you a top 10 pick next year. I can make you a top 10 pick next year playing in this system. You're going to average 19 a game. Kentucky fans, I need you to do me a favor. There's a player named Jackson Robinson, okay? Actually, randomly played at Arkansas, played at a bunch of places. I think he started at A&M, transferred to Arkansas, then he ended up at BYU. That was a guy that was kind of the off-ball kind of guy. He was actually the sixth man for most of the season, as crazy as that is. He averaged 14 points per game on 36% three-point shooting this year, and he's a legitimate NBA draft prospect. DJ Wagner could be that in Mark Pope's system. You know who else I think would be really good in Mark Pope's system, who I think would be great in Mark Pope's system? Big Z. Big Z freaking cook in Mark Pope's system. Big Z would cook in Mark Pope's system. And so I believe that that's another guy. You know, spacing, ball movement, three-point shooting, Euro. There has never been a system better built for Big Z. I think the other thing that's interesting, too, from the Arkansas perspective, obviously, look, Cal's going to try to bring these guys with him, but John Welsh is not going with him to Arkansas. And so we don't know who's going to be running the offense and what that offense is going to look like next year in Fayetteville. And so if I am Mark Pope, I'm not, you don't have to negatively recruit against John Calipari. I think you can turn Reed Sheppard. I think you can improve DJ Wagner's draft stock, Big Z's draft stock, Aaron Bradshaw's draft stock. I know he's in the portal. If I'm Aaron Bradshaw, there isn't a system in America that is better built for you. So that's first order business. You have to go ahead and see what you can get out of this current roster. Is there anybody that you can bring back? Is there any chance that any of these guys are willing to forego the NBA to be a Kentucky Wildcat next year? And some of them should. Some of them are going to come back to college. It sounds like Aaron Bradshaw is going to come back to college. So why not make it at Kentucky? Now, in terms of the players that you would potentially bring, I did see, and by the way, there's going to be more news as the weekend goes on. As I'm recording right now, Dallin Hall, a 38% three-point shooter, 36% three-point shooter, 9 points per game. Listen, good enough to average 9 a game. Listen, let's be honest. So first of all, Dallin Hall just entered the transfer portal, okay? He's definitely a 6th, 7th type man. He's definitely not, if you build your program around him, it's not going to be good. But do I think he can get buckets in the SEC? I think he can get buckets in the SEC. And that'll be what's interesting is who comes with Mark Pope from BYU. BYU, unfortunately, and by the way, I don't know if there's any BYU fans in the chat. We ain't doing any follow-up BYU videos, okay? But I don't know who BYU's next head coach is going to be. Not a priority. But listen, some of the guys that they had on that team can play at Kentucky. It's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be the 5-star McDonald's All-American. But as I just said, Dallin Hall was a really good player at BYU. 36% three-point shooting, 9 points per game. I'm not saying he comes to Kentucky, but I'm saying it's interesting. The other guards, Trevin Nell, 39% three-point shooter, 11 points per game. By the way, I know what you're going to sit there and say, 11 points per game. First of all, it was the Big 12. Second of all, remember this as well, is that on top of it being the Big 12, they had 4 guys averaging double figures and 7 guys that averaged at least 9 points per game. So this is a system where the ball moves. This is a system where the ball does not stick, This is a system where a lot of guys get buckets. And so I'll be curious to see what he does from that perspective. I think the big thing though, listen, you got to bring some, you got to get a staff together, okay? Criticize Calipari for whatever you want, but Calipari put together a staff that could get players. And I do think now that you are in the SEC, you got to get dudes, and you can do it your way. It doesn't have to all be McDonald's All-Americans. But again, the pool at BYU was so limited. For those of you who missed it, I talked about it a minute ago. But BYU, again, think about the pool of players that you could legitimately recruit at BYU. They don't have alcohol on campus. They don't allow caffeine on campus. I'm not kidding. I am not making that up. Caffeine is not allowed on campus. Goes without saying. Getting frisky with the ladies, listen, that's definitely, that gets you thrown out of school. So now that the pool is much wider, you do need a couple dogs. And I don't know who those guys are. I'm not going to claim. Obviously, I've been saying it all week. I had a pretty good feeling Orlando Antigua was going to go with John Calipari to Arkansas. Chin Coleman goes with him. But you got to get some of those big dogs that have those relationships that can go get the kids that you need to win at the highest level. Don't know who those guys are, but I think to me, those are the big steps. You have to meet with the current players. You have to try to convince some of, and listen, I think Mark Pope is new age enough where Mark Pope is not going to try to convince a player who is good enough to be a pro. Like, I don't think he's going to Rob Dillingham saying, you need to come back and play for me. Like, no, he's like, Rob, we wish you the best. Go be great. Go represent this university really well. But I do think Reed Shepherd is on the fence. I do think Big Z has options to weigh. I do think DJ Wagner has options to weigh. I think all of those guys, certainly Reed would put up bigger numbers. I don't know how much he could improve his draft stock, but I think DJ Wagner, Big Z, Aaron Bradshaw would all improve their draft stock if they were to stay. So that's what Mark Pope needs to do. We got over 1,000